So being successful with what I do based on the Navy stuff, I think first off, I've never really done an interview like this, so it's probably kind of good for me because a lot of people, I know they look at us now and they're like, yeah, these guys did time in the military, now they're doing this training thing. I got into this training thing in 2004, almost 10 years ago. I got out of the Navy. This is not what I planned on doing. It kind of happened that way, and obviously it opened up a floodgate. The training industry back when I started at Blackwater, there was no training industry. I mean, you could go to Gunsight, and Ken Hackathorn did some stuff, and then Larry Vickers was probably the first guy to get out and try to kind of start doing it, and then I came along just shortly thereafter him. So me and him kind of were the first ones doing it, but I was doing it for a big company. The first thing I did when I got out of the Navy is, first I wanted to get out because I didn't want to do 20 years. I never wanted to do 20, even when I came in. I made that decision a long time ago. It's just not my personality. I had checked off all the blocks, I was like, hey, I want to get in the gunfight, I want to deploy overseas. I checked all that stuff off, and so, I got out. The first thing I did was I worked for the government, doing something for about a year. Then that job went away, and I was like, oh my God, now I'm like a normal dude, right? I'm like, what do I do? And I actually went to work for like cutting down trees, like doing like lumberjack stuff. And a lot of people, I tell people that, and they're like, they think I'm joking, but I really did. A SEAL owned the company, and he taught me, like I learned arborist stuff, how to cut trees, climbing trees, all this hardcore lumberjack stuff, which was kind of cool. And then, it was like one day this dude calls me up and he goes, hey, that particular job you used to do in the teams, can you teach that to these guys? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, I'm going to pay you this. And I went, what? And then I went down and did it. And that's how the whole thing got started, not planned. Blackwater at the time, a friend of mine who was a SEAL teammate with me owned it, Eric Prince. I didn't know Eric that well, knew him just kind of off the cuff. And there were people who taught at Blackwater, but they were not full-time people. And I went down there, started doing like a class here as I was cutting down trees for a living, being a lumberjack. Do a class, cut trees down for 6 months, do a class, that kind of, and then it was like, bam, they got this big thing going. So I was actually one of the first 4 full-time instructors at BW. And the other 3 guys ended up quitting to go on to bigger and better things. And I don't know, I was too dumb to quit, maybe, I don't know. But I ended up hanging out there. Eventually I was in charge of firearms and tactics, 04 to 09-ish. So, I think the biggest thing about the career at BW is that, for me, big things that I learned. Number one, I really learned to shoot. Just because I was a SEAL, I shot okay, but there's the stuff like now, a professional shooter, I'm way better than I ever was in SEAL teams. And I learned that from the guys that were around me. Guys like, Bill Go, Jason Falla, Aaron Rodgers, Al Clark. There was just tons of guys. Jerry Barnhart, Todd Jarrett, Ross Sanders from Mid-South. There's so many guys, I can't even name them all. Rob Latham, definitely an influence, Larry Vickers. So, I learned how to unscrew everything down there. And I'm like, I would do something, and I'm like, that wasn't that fast. I need to make it fast. So that's the number one thing I learned from BW. That was totally not me. That was just the people that I accidentally surrounded myself with. The second thing is I, again, accidentally kind of invented that whole aftermarket training thing. So we developed that whole template where the government comes in and they go, hey, we want you guys, because you have the experience, we want you to train our guys because we could do it cheaper than they could do it themselves, number one. Number two, they're not taking the time away from their own people to train them. Now instead of having 10 guys in a training cadre in a military unit, they're assaulters or soldiers or whatever you want to call them, and we're doing the training. So I didn't do that on purpose, happened by accident. Of course, I recognized it and kind of exploited it, but yeah, we had a good time at BW. I got a lot of friends in the surf industry, I got some friends in the motorcycle industry, and they don't do it like we do. Like, you know what I mean? The shooting industry is very, almost selfish. Guys don't want to ever give anybody else props. I invented everything, dude. And that's like kind of, that's kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people. I did blog posts a long time ago about the people who helped me out. I mean, people who guys don't even know, like Tony Reeves, he's a state trooper from Texas. Me and that dude developed a lot of stuff on our own. Louis Gines, who I think is back at BW now, me and him. There's just so many guys. The guys I mentioned earlier, tons of dude. J.D. Patinsky is another one. He's with Invictus now. I mean, Pat McNamara, Mike Pannone. I've stolen stuff from Mike Pannone. I haven't even met him, just because, I mean, literally the dude wrote the book on the M4, it's like, Defoor Proformance is my company, and what it is number one, it's a funny misspelled name on purpose because I just think, like Defoor Proformance, like I'm some great, I mean, I see that, and I'm just kind of making fun of how seriously some guys in the shooting industry take themselves, and I wanted it to kind of be out there that I'm not, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. So Proformance is just kind of a take on that. But it's a company, I mean, 95% of my business, I am very lucky in that I have government contracts. I have, a handful of people who work for me now. That's not really advertised. I mean, that go out and do stuff. We do different things. I only do about 10, maybe 12 public kind of open enrollment / civilian classes a year. And I do that because I think I don't want to be that dude who they're like, oh, he's riding the government train. He's good. He kind of said, F off to the civilians. I don't want to be that guy. So that's what Defoor Proformance is. It's just my company. And I have a tribe. I call it a tribe of guys around me that help me out with stuff. So if people want to train with me, I mean, obviously the stuff I do overseas is all State Department approved. I do a TAA with it. But just because I can get a TAA with the State Department does not mean I will necessarily train that country. I mean, I have my own stuff that I go by. Individuals can come to, my classes. We do a moderate background check, probably not moderate's not a good word. We do a pretty decent background check. And in my courses are not really set up. I don't do basic courses anymore because I don't do that many anyway. Some of my competitors, they might do 25, 30 a year. They can do some basic and do some advanced. I drop the word advanced from my stuff anyway because I think it's a little bit of BS. But I just do one type of course, and guys kind of know, you need to have your stuff somewhat square when you go to my courses. But yeah, so I mean, that's the guys that can train with me. And then of course, any LE or MIL that's in the United States. So I've aligned myself with other companies, because number one, it has to be a product I believe in. I mean, I get a lot of offers. I'm very lucky, very fortunate, and I realize that. I get a lot of offers. People are like, hey, use this. I'm like, okay, and I go and I break it or it doesn't work and whatever. So I don't badmouth people on the internet. But yeah, the companies I align myself with, Raven Concealment Systems, I personally believe that's the best concealment holster out there. US Optics, I personally believe that's the best magnified scope out there. Gemtech suppressors, and again, and these are all people that I've met and hung out and drank beer with, and I think Gemtech suppressors are the best out there, good old Idaho boys. And, Mission Ready Equipment, it supplies me with clothing and whatnot, and Mission Ready is a dear friend of mine, Jeff Smith, and, I think what Jeff does with Mission Ready is outstanding, and I like all the products he carries. Ameriglow, I got a lot of stuff with Ameriglow where I do Rich Callahan, and he makes my sights that I came out with. So yeah, I mean, they're companies that I truly believe in. I wouldn't put them on my website or whatever if I didn't, so yeah.